Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with a couple nerds. So I saw Professor Bill in the chat, so I'm like, hey, you want to get in on this action? Because it kind of like loosely pertains to what's going on with War Eagle Keep, Brandon, who runs the behind the stream stuff for the Marvel game. And I thought it might be cool to have you on and talk about the stuff. You've produced other shows now as well, and it looks like something you're experimenting with. We're the guinea pigs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brandon, I have been doing this online gaming production for a very short time. However, I work currently in real life, thinking that this isn't real life, that I work in the production world. I produce live events and concerts. And so for the longest time, I live in Arkansas, where there's a lot of country music, and I do a lot of that in corporate media. All that being really boring, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to take my skills and move it towards the stuff I really care about. So,
Well, we've really lucked out because you reached out to us after we wrapped up season 1 of the Marvel game that Bill ran. And really, you kind of like, you're actually the one to inadvertently push things forward, because I've always got so many plates spinning behind the scenes that if I don't act on something, I'm not doing anything with it. It's go or stop. That's it.
Yeah, we did the Halloween stream last night, episode 4. Me and Bill kind of worked about an hour and a half before the game to kind of put some stuff together, which we decided if we have more content like that, if we have that much on our plate, that we're going to work a little bit longer. Doing this thing live is really interesting because it brings a lot of like what I would feel like people that were getting into live TV production for the first time. They would do something and be like, oh, well, that didn't work. And you take like a mental note, next time for this to execute well live, I need to do XXX, and that is like the struggles, and it's fun. It's fun struggles to have. But doing this live is, once you hit something, that's what people are seeing.
Oh, absolutely. One of like the tricky things for me when we do the streams now, you guys are doing like an intro beforehand.
Yeah.
I never know when to start. And even like before we get started, Bill's looking at me like, are you going to start the thing? I'm like, I can't start the thing.
So just so you, this is funny. We're going to do this live. So I'll give you my producer note for that time. We use Zoom to capture our webcams for that game. And in Zoom, I actually still keep my webcam up, and I kind of take cue from the Wayne's World when they're in the studio, and it's like the 3. And I'm always like, you're good.
I'm probably looking somewhere else, like looking to see if the stream started, and I'm looking at the wrong screen.
And so that's like another one of the struggles that we found is that the doing things live, what's live to us and live to chat is there's a latency that we found, and it's a variable too, which is I find really interesting. But so we don't really know exactly when, we might say, and then Scarecrow pops out, and then the stream might even see that like 5 minutes later, or it's really hard to gauge that stuff, to try to be interactive with the players and with the chat at the same time. And so I'm gonna get like a huge satellite and just poke it outside of my house so I can get the best internet signal possible. I don't know how else to achieve it, but I'm gonna keep working at it.
Well, I'm enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun, and I actually like this game way better than season 1. I like playing a fictional character that's been made up over playing myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because in the last one, you guys, you were yourselves and discovered your powers inside yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're kind of taking like I look at it kind of like an '80s approach. Like all the heroes really seem very '80s-esque to me, as far as their styling, which really kind of that when I developed the graphics for the game, um, I was I really wasn't thinking too much about Nerdarchy at the time, other than the general inspiration that you guys were playing it for that first time, and that was actually one of the games that I moved from out of second edition.
Well,
And good.
that makes a lot of sense though if you think about it, because me, Bill, Doug, DeVay, Travis, we're all of similar age,
Mhm.
and with Megan being the youngster,
Yeah,
and also the game came out in the 80s.
80s, 80, 84, yeah. So that's one of the things that when I started developing that graphic, at first I was just thinking about just general overlays and borders and how that would work. And I started messing around with squares and stuff. And then I came up with the whole shelf and TV idea, and it felt really retro to me. And I don't know, why you guys popped into my head, but it was like when I started designing it and putting it all together, I said, you know what? I need to reach out to those guys because this seems too perfect. And so, like I said, I made the graphic before even you guys agreed to it. So, it was really hopeful work there.
So what's it been like, Phil, for you guys working back and forth on this? I mean, it's been a short time so far, but compared to what you've done previously.
Well, just like, everybody's got a lot of work to do, but like I know, like for myself, all the effort and all the work that I put into the videos that I put out, like it's a lot. And the weekend is when it starts to kind of, die down for me because I've finished most of the work pre-advanced and I could just put up older videos. So that's when I'm like, okay, now let's start working on the game. And I take a full day to just think of, okay, these are the things that we did last time. So now I'm going to do these things. And what can I set up for in the future? It's like you think about a standard MCU movie, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It's not just the movie. They're also setting things up for what's to come. There's also those end credit scenes, and that's what I'm trying to do. So then once I get all that stuff down, then I'm also trying to think of, I know Brandon's style. We've talked so much about, and we'll talk from like 10 at night until 1:30 in the morning the next day. We'll sit there and just rap for a long time, just going over all the different things. And like, okay, I know what kind of files he wants. I know what settings he wants. I know pretty much everything this guy wants because we just sit there and just rap for a long time.
Yeah, and really trying to tune in.
Right? Already, both of their wives have hired PIs, and they're like, I want to know. They want to know, who are these guys
doing?
They think that we're having an affair. There's that possibility. I'm in Canada, he's in Arkansas, but forget about it, dude. So yeah, all it is just trying to do as much as I possibly can so that it's easier for him, because like he's also saying like, okay, what kind of keywords is Bill going to use in order to, for me to know when to push that, because I don't want to be the guy who's just like, hey, boom, hit this. Because and also that's the thing, like, you mentioned earlier, Dave, that you're looking at my face going, start the thing.
Yeah.
Because you're watching the thing that I already did. Like I put together this thing, and Brandon's putting it up. So we already know what's going on. So I'm not looking at the thing. I'm not listening to the thing. I'm looking at the stream to see when it's going to finish. Okay, it's finished. Okay, Dave, it's you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Brandon.
And so
Brandon's like, go.
And then that's another thing where we're learning, the ins and outs of how to operate a, this kind of online studio, where, you have a producer and a director in completely different regions, and how that works in a live sense. And so, again, we choose our battles. Some things we know we can win. Other things we just kind of let go and just say, it's going to happen when it happens. Like one of the things that we talked about just letting happen is the appearance of the villain as you're fighting. We really want to focus on the first time you see it, which we had an issue last time with our Facebook message, and when we were rapping about how to get the content started before the session, and then we accidentally shared the file inside of the group chat.
By we, it means me.
Yeah, so there's little stuff like that, but like at least for the audience, we kind of wanted it to have some suspense to it. One of my goals working in tabletop gaming production. I feel like I'm creating a new genre here of work. Which I'm sure there's people out there that do this because, again, me and Travis actually relate really well from WebDM. We've had a bunch of chats about, what it looks like to be behind the camera. But one of the plights is to really focus on the players and the GMs having a better experience and not having to focus so much on these technical details like the stream, what people are seeing is this live, or is somebody's volume up or down or something. That should be really on the shoulders of somebody else. When it's live, it's a little more interesting. And again, I probably underestimated how hard it was going to be before getting into this game. And so it's taught me a lot, I'll say that. And so if anybody's interested in like what I'm using and how I'm using it, I use OBS Studio. It's a free open source software. And they like constantly do updates. There's a very popular one that people use, XSplit, which I'm actually using right now because my webcam would not tether to Hangouts for some reason. And I guess I have to find creative technical ways around things. But with OBS, I think that's been the one tool that's really allowed me to do all of this. So I was really pumped to find that.
So I always assumed, probably wrongly so, that OBS and kind of XSplit were the same thing, one just being open source.
They are, but it's like any tool. It's how you use it. And so like again, I'll give you an example for our home game. I say we stream it, but we just really live record it because it's easier than which I actually found I can record it from directly in OBS now. Side note, I'm gonna hop back onto that in a second, but we use XSplit to position the webcams because XSplit's interface for cropping images is easier than OBS's, but OBS's streaming abilities, at least in my experience, have been easier. So I use the programs together to get what I want as an image.
Okay, so you combine them to kind of do what you want. Is that why it's so much easier for you to set up, like before we get started?
Yeah, so I actually used that time. So with our game, we used, like I said, we used Zoom for the webcam capture, and then I take that directly into OBS. Well, I used OBS's cropping interface for the first time with our game, for the Marvel Superheroes game, and it was really hard to do. It just took me a long time, and so like I have been preaching to everybody, as long as we get the same amount of people every time, I can the windows arrange themselves in such a fashion that it pops up for me exactly how I had it the last time. And if we were to do lesser players or something, I've been doing stuff like adding in another computer to fill the void inside of Zoom. And so, like, again, it's trying to come up with those creative ways to get around the technical issues that we pose to it. Like we're making the issues, so I'm not that mad about fixing them.
Yeah. So yeah, because I know when we use Zoom for the Saver Dice.
Yeah.
And then OBS. I say we, but really Cody does all that.
Cody, yeah.
And I know, like, it used to be like a pain for him to move things around. So now he just has us load in a certain order.
Right. And that is one thing that helps, and I think everybody's looking for that one little, hey, if you guys could just do this, it'll help me.
But it seems like you have something that's like preset, so it's already there.
It's getting more like that, and like I said, we've had two kind of hiccups in that front where we had Megan out week before last, and then DBJ out this last one. And so that was, I actually got to use the same technique to fix for yesterday's game. And so I was really happy to to find a solution to a problem and then be able to use that exact same solution in the exact same way, and it worked, immediately. So I mean that took me moments to fix, and it was one of those points as being this producer behind the scenes where I'm like, finally it's coming together, like I'm finally figuring it out. Some other like aha moments were recently when we were in the game. This was our Halloween game last night, and we had some spooky, scary sounds that I figured out around halfway through the stream that the players were not hearing it, but the stream was. And I was like, oh, finding these little settings of this program or that program to adjust. And so my list of notes is getting really long as far as like what the checklist before a game starts,
Well, thankfully, Professor Bill was quite good at conveying the spookiness.
We were talking about that after.
That's funny, Bill. You want to tell them that story we were talking about when that happened?
Just the idea that like I'm expecting at any moment, because I got the live stream over here, but I'm talking to you guys here, so I'm playing both roles, and watching the chat, and I'm like, I'm not seeing or hearing the things going on. What's going on? So
and then I message him.
Say again? Oh yeah. You actually messaged me because we're talking on Facebook at the same time, Facebook Messenger, and I'm just like, wait, hold up, this stuff's not coming through. Oh crap. Okay, so he noticed it because he's actually watching for it. But if you guys go back and watch the game, there's the one part where you guys, where was it? It was with Act 2 with the ghosts, the black-eyed children,
yep.
Where I completely switched my game style. Since I know now that it's not going to happen over here, I turn around, I start doing the creepy voice, I start telling you what they're saying and things like that, because I actually already pre-programmed this stuff here, but it wasn't coming through for you guys, so the players couldn't hear it.
Right. And so he had to, again, that's kind of like, you're talking about gaming styles. You can, people who game, theater of the mind are really used to playing or GMing in such a way that you're very descriptive of sounds and sense and imagery and stuff like that, which I'm a big fan of. I actually have not embraced the virtual tabletop movement as much as other people have. I'm still kind of a fan of the theater of the mind. I really do feel like, the proper, or I didn't say proper, I won't go that far. A good GM that can embrace theater of the mind is one of the best. Like if you have that skill, it's unmatched, because that is being that descriptive. It's storytelling, and that's I think one of the biggest things that draws me to Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games is the storytelling aspect more than the mechanics and gaming aspect. So, and that may be that differs between person to person. But with this, we have all these visual aids and stuff. And this was one of the first times, last night was one of the first times that we said, okay, we're going to try to dual use the visual aids for the stream and for the players. But as I said earlier, when we were talking about latency of the stream, I'm sending to the stream. So the stream is seeing all that stuff, and the players may not be seeing that stuff. Now, on a player side, you could have one or two computers up. If you have one, you may just be looking at the webcams and trying to engage with the players. If you have two up, you may have Nerdarchy up on stream, watching that as well. Kind of seeing how the overlays are looking, which is I find cool, because I do enjoy that players enjoy this as well. But that latency is the problem, because when we talk about those like moments like, and he appears, that doesn't work as well in that sense. So
yeah, my screen is just full of windows.
Right.
While the game is going on, I have everything not minimized, but smaller, so I can just have
Smaller,
windows
yeah.
everywhere and kind of like follow what's going on. So like when like Bill will go to me and I might seem lost, that's because I click something and close
the window, yeah.
that
Window.
I now need up so I can unmute myself.
Right.
I don't even hide it. I'm just like, okay, let's see. Which window do I have that in? Okay, it's over here. Okay, so what happens here is he's got a remarkable 30 agility. So,
Right.
but like our game style keeps changing practically from week to week. If you remember last week, we had the little map up of the train car.
Yeah.
So, and I arranged that so it looked like battleship. There's the left side and the right side, and then 10 numbers in between. So that you can all the players and the chat, anybody who's watching can clearly see where everybody should be based on what they said. But then like in this game, there is nothing like that. There is no visual. So with an open area, and I'm not only playing the bad guy, and I'm not only paying attention to what the chat is doing, but I'm also trying to put myself in the place of the players. So when everybody's going towards the gate, that's easy. But then when Dave turns around, the things that were on his right are now on his left, and I have to keep that in mind because, like, this is where he threw down the gate. This is where there's no traps. That's where he's actually headed towards. So I could completely screw everything up if I'm not paying attention to where everybody's going, and that sucks sometimes. But the production, can you imagine, as I think about this, could you imagine if we were all in a similar location or the same location? We could all play in War Eagle Keep Studios. You know what I'm saying? Looking out over that freaking ridiculously beautiful, and if nobody's seen War Eagle Keep, war.eagle.keep on Instagram, go check that out. There's a reason why he calls it War Eagle Keep. It is gorgeous. The view outside of your window and the setup that you've got and the kinesthetics that you make, unbelievable. You deserve massive amounts of credit for that. War.eagle.keep. But if we could all be there and then just set up the cameras in the cool way and actually make the miniatures, this would be the greatest game ever. But we're doing it live.
So and by the way, that link is in the description so you guys can check out Brandon's Instagram, War Keep Eagle. We have a couple questions for you, Brandon. We're getting some echoing, so I just muted you while Bill was talking. So Embershade wants to know where in Arkansas you live because he's in Arkansas as well and looking for a gaming group. And then we have John Hodges. If you were in the game, what power would you have? So you just got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. And yeah, hopefully I aided the echo a little bit. So first off, Arkansas, I'm in Northwest Arkansas in the Fayetteville area. University of Arkansas is kind of what we're known for. And then also a little north to us is Walmart headquarters, which Bill has voiced his strong opinions on. And then is... as far as powers, I actually, what Ash has really kind of got. I've always been kind of the Human Torch-esque type, leaning towards that kind of character. But I will say that flight is probably the one. Yeah, flight is generally the one that I usually lean towards. And so I think one time, this was back in 94, something like that, when we were playing playing back then with the advanced edition. I played a character that had the flame control, but the flames acted almost as like a jet engine, and so that was how I gained propulsion is through fire. So I had to actually, which it caused some problems, I found out, because I would torch a lot of things on my way out of a lot of places. It would just be like, and then I'm just like torching the whole ground before I leave. So learning those little things about how to develop a character. But yeah, flight's the one.
Going back to what you were kind of saying earlier about theater of the mind. I find even if you're using minis, it's better to play like you're not before you put them out, before you do the battle grids, kind of describe things and kind of like set the scene so that the players can kind of have an idea. but maybe they don't necessarily know exactly what they're coming up against. What they're if you just plop down the minis, and it's easy to get lazy and do this as a GM. Like, oh, that's an orc, especially if you're going with WYSIWYG, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But, you know, in my Scarlet Sisterhood game, they're always trying to figure out what the monsters are, especially Jen, who does a lot of GMing, and she's just very, like, meta. Even though she doesn't bring it into the game per se, but she just wants to know. And because I don't always describe the monsters the way they are in the monster manual, or you know, sometimes your description doesn't really match up with the image the same way. So the player, it really enhances the experience for the players, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with Theater of the Mind is that description of what you're seeing. And so, you know, I actually, if you want, I could give you guys a kind of a small tour of the War Eagle Keep studio. And kind of show you what I do with our players. I go here.
Cool. Let's do that. You guys go to roll call in the chat while he runs the tour, and then we'll jump back to you guys.
I'm from a mobile location in the Punisher's van.
Yeah.
Take 5 karma.
Take 5 karma, right? Let's see.
While he's looking at that, the superheroes game is any superheroes game is going to be particularly hard to do. Anything like a landscape in, because you also have characters who can fly, so it'd be like playing 3D chess. So Theater of the Mind helps in that regards.
Yeah, minis is useless, especially if you play a game like Mutants and Masterminds where they mimic the powers really well. Like you could play a speedster that runs around the world.
Yeah. You could easily take control of the situation, but then you have a GM that can kind of wrangle you back. So yeah, this is the view of our space, and I'll kind of walk around. So actually, what's up right now is if you see on the table below and the screen above. So this is a 32-inch monitor that I built into a custom table that I built. There's a custom DM section on this side, and then the projector above. And so what my goal is to try to create like to set a scene. And so I get my maps from 2-Minute Tabletop. If anybody's interested in some pretty cool maps that are hand drawn by a really cool guy, Russ at 2-Minute Tabletop, patreon.com. So I get maps from him, and then kind of from his Patreon page, and put them on here, which actually has been a blessing because the images literally snap to the size of my TV in this table. And then so I have these little miniatures here that I made these custom to that out of just like some press board, and then printed out the players' images on there, and then they can go to town on whatever happens here. But I like to try to tie in the visual elements into the maps a lot so that it feels like you're there. I'm really big on immersion and stuff like that. So being able to kind of create immersion within my space is really important to me. But I can also do things like throw up a dragon. Those things are kind of like, really impactful to the players when they're sitting there, and then a dragon that's taller than them appears and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool things that I can do with having these tools at my disposal.
Just wait until you get the holographic image projectors.
Yeah, we've had some discussions.
All right, I'm going to jump into the chat now and see where people are coming in from. John Hodges in Denver, Colorado. Doug, the Nerdator, is in Cleveland. We got the OZ in the house with Raven. Frigginator is in Monroe, Washington. We also have Monroe, Louisiana with Jacob. Elfbait is in Edmonds, Washington. Regilio is in Utah. We got PTB Synthex in the Nine Hills. We've got Canada in the house with Toronto from Uncle Peter. Geek and Undies is in Circleville, Ohio. Ink Boy is in Texas. Joe Fisher is Carney's Point, right down the road from me, actually. We've got Shallender with Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Quebec, Canada in the house with Sylvain. And we got Szechuan in the house, which I'm probably butchering the fuck out of. With Dune Barrow. There's a lot of people really digging your setup. We got Dallas in the house with Ed, Lincoln's in Sweden, and Fort Lauderdale with Sean Orwin. So that is a pretty sweet setup. You know, I'm always leery of adding more and more technology into my games.
Yeah.
Because I'm easily distracted.
So for us, it was a lot of it was kind of like with this game, you know, ironing out the kinks. The first couple sessions are going to be a little rough. But once you get everything kind of figured out, like for instance, the last game that we played in here, I mean, just went off without a hitch. I mean, everything popped up as I expected. You know, even when the players did an unexpected twist on me, I was kind of prepared for it in ways that I didn't even understand. I was prepared for it digitally. And I was like, oh, I must have planned that I needed to remove this guy because they were, you know, he was going to get taken, you know, or something like that. And so, you know, I think that with technology, it's you do have to play a fine line, or you walk a fine line of how much do I want to deal with to be able to still run a game. Which, you know, in doing this, I kind of told myself too, man, I wish I just had somebody behind me running the technology so I could just focus on GMing, or the other way around. Like I'm not necessarily, I don't think that I started GMing for the purpose of one, you know, I think everybody has that problem in their gaming groups. Like, okay, so who's going to GM? And sometimes there's people who are like, of course I'm the GM, you know. But for us, it was like, you know, I had a bunch of new players, and I came back into 5th edition from 2nd edition, and so there's a huge gap, and I had a lot to learn, and so I actually took some. I went to Dawnforgedcast and I got a lot of. I went through his tutorials. He helped me out a lot with some stuff, and I joined his Patreon program. And then me and him started working together. And then I started doing the website, and then, you know, I just kind of stair step from there. You know, and then, you know, moving on from Dawnforgedcast, then, you know, working with Nerdarchy, then I'm working with a couple of other large groups that I can't divulge information just yet, but some cool things are on the front right now. We're really glad to be a part of this this really, you know, niche community.
So there's a little micro revolution going on.
Yeah, well, you know, it's like I think that the thing that we've talked about the most is nobody really knows what this looks like. What does, you know, online tabletop gaming really look like? Everybody kind of has their own approach at it and have kind of figured out things. And I think that I would say Cody at Taking 20 with the Saber Dice campaign is probably, you know, it seems like me and him are kind of on the same line of thinking of how to present what a game looks like. The hardest thing to, and I mean, we all know this struggle is like sitting and watching something for 4 hours. So like our home game is 4 hours. I expect that no one watches the game for 4 hours. That's just, it just seems impossible to do unless you're playing. With Marvel Superheroes, we're at 2 hours with that one, and that one's a little more manageable. I think that we have a steady amount of people. It seems like it's been pretty steady, the people that kind of stay and watch throughout the whole time. It takes commitment, you know, on a viewer side.
You're right, though. There's a solid couple dozen people that show up at the beginning and stay to the end.
Yeah,
and that's kind of why, like, I picked for Nerdarchy's online games that we run on a regular basis to be 2 hours. I feel like that's a good window. Like, that's the length of a movie. People will sit through the length of a movie.
Yeah, and again, it's that, you know, how long can you keep somebody engaged as a viewer? Now, not to say that, you know, I think that we generally, even though we're like you, for instance, Dave, running Nerdarchy, creating content and stuff is a big part of your of the business. But for the players, like genuinely, they're just playing to get to play with Bill and get that experience of the game. And so I think what everybody else is getting out of it is they just like seeing people get that experience. It's almost like people that watch football and then wish, like, man, I wish I could be out there playing football.
Well, John Hodges in the chat brought up the point that I wanted to make as well, and Bill has done an excellent job of making this game interactive and making the chat part of the game.
Very cool.
He's done it in a way that doesn't make the game and the players lose meaning for them. And that's the tricky part. And I feel like this season's way better than the first season, but it's just like everything we've done is like we're figuring it out as we go and finding finding those sweet spot. Like in the first season, Doug would get really frustrated but because the karma pool for the chat was too big. So they could just like wail on people.
They could do anything. Yeah.
And this time it's more manageable. There's a chat leader that they have to get permission to use the karma from.
Yep.
So it makes it easier to deal with, and the way Bill is, putting opportunities out there for the chat, and also like I feel like there's more interesting ways for them to spend big blocks of karma in season 2. In season 1, there's nothing really exciting with I'm going to add 50 karma to punch Doug in the face. I mean, as much as I know people would love to do that. But when they go, no, I'm going to drop 30 karma and now there's hostages. Or, now there's an oncoming train coming at this train or something like that. Or, Aunt May is in danger. What are you going to do? Like that stuff is meaningful and exciting.
Yeah, they're actually changing
been great.
the game. They've got, what's it called? Player
agency.
Thank you. They got the player agency. So it's, I don't know, it just makes it worth it.
Where like I've seen like there's other games where they run almost like Hunger style games, and like so the additions, the stuff going on in the game don't always make sense to the story. There's no basis in the story for it. It's just because these features have been added to the game, and it gives the player, not the players, but the chat and the viewers a chance to interact. But it's not really meaningful for the players, unless you're interested in playing that kind of game. But it's definitely going to kind of like derail the story because it changes the focus of what people are kind of paying attention to. So,
sorry, nobody wants to punch Doug in the face. Come on.
No, but everybody does want to pee on Tad Cannon for some reason. This has just been a recurring thing. So, chat, if you're listening, stop peeing on him.
You're defecating, as the case may be.
The chat is listening, and this is only promoting the subject.
I would beg to offer because I beg to differ because from season 1 we saw people gang up on Doug a lot.
Well, they ganged up on you too.
Yeah,
well, that's true.
I think that influenced you making a character who could multiply. Let's see who's getting up on who.
That's just one of my favorite superpowers. Because I think about like if I had superpowers in real life, like there's a lot of things that'd be kind of cool, but I'm like, what would really be useful? Especially if I don't want to like be a villain or really be a hero either. Like,
I just want to be able to multitask.
Yeah, I just want to get a lot done.
That's great.
I'm a simple man. I have simple needs.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things that Brandon and we got a like from you, Dave, which means that's permission. That counts as permission on the interwebs. Is that a couple people want to start their own Marvel games, and I'm really looking forward to the idea of them putting it online, getting several missions out, like I don't know, half a dozen at least. And then maybe have like a quick little 1 or 2 episode crossover with these teams so that, the first episode is you guys fighting each other. And then the next episode, you find the common goal and you work together. Just something to those effects, that there are other heroes out there.
right?
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It does. It does. I'll tell you. I'll give you a little insight on what one of the projects we're working on is. There's a lot of people out there that would like to play online, and don't really know maybe how to or who with, and it's always been kind of an issue with people, and so trying to figure out that like how to solve that issue. We've had a lot of discussions around a tabletop gamers casting office, in a sense, where you would kind of audition for playing in certain games. Dave, whenever we were talking about this with our game, there's some calculation going on behind the scenes as to who we want to get in what game. When I was over working with Dawnforgedcast on a couple of games, we had similar issues on how to pair up people that play well together. Some people are power gamers, and usually power gamers like playing with other power gamers, because there's power gaming on top of power gaming on top of power gaming. If you're a very let's just say you're into voices, you probably like to play with other people that like to do a voice as well. Kind of adds to the immersion of playing together. And so trying to figure out strengths of these people and pairing them together with other players is a real issue that we have in the tabletop community, or in the online tabletop community, and one I'm looking to fix.
Well, here's the thing too. Once you put it online as entertainment, that you just, if it's not entertaining, no one's going to watch. Is part of the problem as well. A lot of the online games that I recently by several months back that I started, I tapped a lot of the people that have been very helpful in doing stuff for Nerdarchy, because like I wanted to have a way to thing that I could think of, because we're not in a position to financially compensate them for the help they've given us. So it's like, well, what can I do? Well, I can play games with them. It's a small token of my appreciation of, hey, let's do this thing together and hang out. And it's worked out nicely just because there's been good chemistry. And not only that, though, if you think about it, the people that are helping Nerdarchy are really dedicated to the hobby. So it just kind of makes sense that they would probably be, you're a higher echelon of gamer.
Absolutely. And when I was in a game at Dawnforgedcast, and we got paired up kind of randomly with a group of characters that we ended up, or a group of people played as characters, and we ended up getting a really good gaming group together. It was just actually by chance. It wasn't even by any kind of strategy or structure. I think that's that's life. You're going to run into people that you may stick around with for years, and you may see one time and then go on. But with this stuff, I think that the biggest thing that I find is that I'm big on story. I've mentioned that earlier. And so when you have a group that wants to develop a story together, I think that's the best thing that you can have with a gaming group, is a group that's just like ready, like, all right, guys, we're gonna do this. Everybody's gonna put their work in, and we're gonna build this. With our home group, we've been going on for we're on our second year now. In one setting, in one campaign, and to see the world develop is just it's a really cool thing. I think that every gaming group should have that.
So also, as an addendum, I want to say, like, if I'm not trying to put us as gamers above any other gamer, like however you play the game is fine, and as long as you're having fun, that's fine as well too. I'm just making the distinction between gaming as the hobby and gaming as entertainment as well. You have to be able to do both, if they're both part of the goal.
Yeah, I'll give you my best example on that is I watched there was a roundtable discussion. I can't remember who hosted it, but it was like Merles and Colville and
Adam Cabal.
Yeah, and Merles was talking about like one of the first games that he played in, and I think it was that roundtable discussion anyways. But he was talking about how the first time he played, they were probably like butchering rules and not, I think he mentioned something about doing saving throws for everything that they did. Like everything involved a saving throw for some reason. And when I play and we started streaming it, I was really nervous because I was like, I don't want anybody to watch this and be like, oh, you did that wrong. That should have been an insight check.
That doesn't sound like anything the internet would do.
Right. But ultimately what he was saying is the point was we were having a blast, and we're going to remember those things forever. And so it was really great to hear Merle say that, like, coming from him, it was like justification, like, all right, man, I can do it. Like I can be the kind of DM that I want to be. My players can be the kind of players they want to be. We're going to guide each other along, and then we'll figure it out from there. And so I really think that there's a lot of something people should take away that from Merle's, like, just be the kind of person you want to be, and you're gonna make a memorable campaign in your own.
No, absolutely. Like, we're playing a Star Wars game now, and we have another GM doing it, and his GM style is a little bit different. And after the first session, like, me and Ted are having a conversation, and Ted's like, should we talk to him about the X, because it's something we don't really agree with when we talk about gaming in general. And we said stuff about that particular style on the show, but I'm like, you know what? No, because it's a legitimate way to play the game. Not everyone plays the game the same. Just because that isn't our go-to, like, we're playing a Star Wars game and there's a lot of really cool NPCs, and he likes to use them, right? And it's okay. It's just not how our group has interacted with gaming in the past. And to me, and we've kind of said this in the past, if you're using a lot of NPCs and you're the GM and you're making the NPCs roll to do things, you're really just playing the game by yourself. So it seems odd to us. But that being said, I still feel like it's a legitimate way to play the game, because that some people just like the mechanics and the rules, and they follow them no matter what, where our style might be more narrative. But as a whole, Nerdarchy isn't really here to tell you the right way to play the game or how to play the game. All we ever do is maybe, we run some exposés on how we like to play the game more so than how we think it should be played. And that's how I always want to come across.
And I think the internet, and I'll kind of go put a blanket over internet tabletop gaming instruction, or instructional videos. Most of them, even though a lot of people look at them as, this person is saying this is the way it is, and I'm making a video because I'm telling you this is the way it is, most of them are just editorial kind of views on this is how we see it, and we're just telling you because this is the nature of our show, and I think too many people look at these views as a one-way street. And like I said, hearing Merle say that was just like, man, it's up to you. That was one of the great things about the game design for 5th edition, is kind of reeling it back and saying, yeah, we don't have to have all of these rules, and you don't have to follow all of them, but there's some core stuff that we want you to stay inside of. So
yeah, and literally, they're the only guys that could say that. Like, this is the way you're supposed to play. You can only play this way. Like, if anybody could say it, it's the guys that made the game, but they're not saying that either.
Well, and it's one of the reasons I like the Marvel superheroes setting too. I think that mechanic-wise, it's very loose. It's very open to the GM. Bill has kind of laid it out for us as how this world looks, what you can and can't do, but ultimately it's very open. And as a player, that's one of the best things I love about the phase rip system, is that you can it actually, when Open Legend came out, I really kind of thought that had some hints of Marvel superheroes. At least I did. I don't think that anybody or everybody thought that, but just that freedom of, like, I have, like, Fire Control. I decided that my guy was going to propel himself with that fire. And that was a decision that I made. It wasn't in the book that said that it had to be X like this, and as long as the game master approves of it, we're rolling, and that's it. And then the phase rip stats or ability scores and stuff, they allow you to reinforce what you have and how you do it.
I think Bill will agree that Marvel phase rip, because he was gaming back in those days as well, was light years ahead of any RPG that was released at the time. It had the least amount of tables because the 80s were all about the more tables, the better. Mm-hmm. And not only that, it was very rules light. You only use percentile dice.
Yep.
The karma system was completely unique at that time. And literally decades later, other games are really using that kind of system where your XP, your experience, or even bennies are being built back into the games. And Marvel, I'm fairly certain, was the first game to do that. So there's so many things that they kind of innovated on, and then everyone forgot about it and like moved in these other directions.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, the spendable XP is revolutionary essentially, and just everything about it. The thing that I love about it the most is that each game that you're playing, you have a better sense to make it a comic book. Comic books can go for an arc. Comic books can go on a long series. You can have just a one shot. You could do whatever you want. Like, that's where I believe the term one shot came from, was a comic book. But the mechanics alone are, to me, more like, you look at the comic books, look at a character like Archangel. He went from being just Angel, a guy who can fly with wings, to a guy who's got these metal wings that he could throw, and there's a paralytic poison on him, and his blood is actually a healing agent that he heals himself, or he can pour some on you and you'll heal also, and just all these crazy things that he can do. So literally, the way that I imagine this is, here's a guy, a player, who says, I want to be able to do this, and the judge says, tell me how it's going to work in the game. As opposed to, here are the rules for the game. What kind of character are you going to make?
It's funny. Doug's in the chat. He's like, I have no idea how this game works. I just tell Bill what I want to do. He tells me what to roll. That's the best way to do it. And, and really, that's one of the things I really like about the third edition of Mutants and Masterminds, because I think Steve Kenson was given a lot of freedoms when they upgraded the edition to actually go back and take a lot of those things he liked from Marvel Phase Rip and incorporate them into the game and get rid of a lot more of the D&D-ish style stuff. And like, now your character sheet in a Mutants and Mastermind game looks very much like the old stat, cards you would get, the collector cards, because they got rid of the numbers and just used the modifier. They changed up the names from the D&D chain names for stats and abilities to ones that felt more like a superhero game. I'm gonna have to run that for you guys at some point.
You said you're going to once. Listen, there's a lot of guys in the chat that are talking about running a game, and for me, like, I think that the best thing you do, like, if you're gonna run a module, you're gonna run this, or you're gonna run that, or how are you gonna do it? Literally, just sit down, read a comic book. Any comic book, I feel, will do it. Run a comic book, look at the way the players interact with each other, look at the overall arc of everything, and just run a game. You can run the exact game that you see in the comic book. You can run something that you see. Like, if you want to run a game, do the one that's in the Advanced Players game, the Advanced Players set. That was the one that came out in '86. It's the blue with all the characters on the front running towards. Like, there's a lot of characters.
Yeah, I played that.
Yeah, there's that game. It's got its own map inside. You can find all that stuff online, all of it, and just try and play that game. It's a cool little story with, there's an alcove that has, on the end of it, there's a hollow brick, and inside there's some information, and they want to break it, and you pull it out, and there's the secret formula inside. Just, it's a simple, fun comic book thing, and that's all you got to do. Just have some fun with it. And as far as doing it online, there's tutorials all over the place. Just like Nerdarchy's giving you tutorials about how to play this or how to incorporate that. Plenty of tutorials online how to operate whatever system you're going to use so you can put it online. Don't worry about quality. Don't worry about what people say. I make mistakes all the time in the game. All the time. And I'm just like, whatever. We're having fun. That's what counts.
That's just it too. Like, and you can do it at whatever level you're comfortable with. Like a lot of our games, we do the bare minimum and basic of, just running and putting up a stream. Like I'm just starting to play with some things now in the games that I'm running, with using, just using Zoom as opposed to just doing Google Hangouts, just because I think it looks a little cleaner and is a little less resource intensive on the internet for people that don't have as great internet. But you could do something similar, whether it's Skype, Discord, Zoom, Google Hangouts. It doesn't really matter, especially if all you're doing is getting together and playing with your friends. Maybe you just start off with just screen sharing maps now and again, or images you want to put in the game. So you just need to find your comfort level and start there, and then you can build from there.
Yeah. It helps for somebody like me who has no shame. I'll do whatever. I'll do a jig. I'll do a dance, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
What do you need to see? How can I entertain you?
Are you not entertained? But yeah, if you're not comfortable with it, like Dave said, do a podcast version. I don't need to see your faces. I just want to hear the game. That might appeal to a lot more people, in fact.
I've actually noticed that there's kind of a recent, maybe not recent, but there has been a flux of podcasts, D&D and tabletop gaming coming out, and I think that it's really interesting. We were talking about entertaining earlier, and it's really odd to think of us us guys as entertainment. But I don't think that that's why we're here. A lot of the reasons that like I'm here is I took what I do in the production world and said, I just want to give this back. I want to give back to the community that's given to me. And it's when we talk about streaming these live games, it seems like we've mentioned a lot of times it being a fan service, Dave. I think me and you were talking about that. And just because, we sit here and we talk about why D&D, why tabletop gaming, and there's not everybody is really just sitting back and can we just play it? I know we talk about it all the time. Can we play? And I think it's part of that I feel like is kind of bringing out like the kid in us. Like here we are, we're back at it, just like we were. And I really enjoy that aspect of it a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're right around the hour mark now. We started late, we end late. Yeah. At some point, I have to go do some trick-or-treating stuff, I think.
Yeah.
It's weird because my kids are really big now, but I don't know.
Stuff to do it.
Actually, my son is not trick-or-treating this year. He's 16. And the last couple of years, he's like my size. The last couple of years, people keep giving him a hard time. So I think that has motivated him not to trick-or-treat this year.
That started with me when I was 12.
And we're gonna walk around with all we have a bunch of little cousins, Ted's kids, or I guess nieces and nephews for me, but for them it's the cousins. We got Ted's kids; they're young. We've got my sister-in-law kids; they're young. So they have this tradition. They go to the grandparents and do the trick-or-treating thing
around there. Yeah, the safe area.
I couldn't trick-or-treat after 12 because everybody's like, "You're too old." I'm like, I'm only 12. It's still too old.
Yeah. But my wife showed something on Facebook the other day. It's very poignant. It's like, all right, so you have teenagers out there trick-or-treating. At least they're not doing other stuff.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the one thing that I found, like, so I'm heavy on Instagram, and I follow a lot of like cosplayers and stuff. And man, do cosplayers love Halloween? This is like their time to shine. They're out there in full force. So
it's that one time of year where everyone's like a cosplayer.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And they're like, you guys don't really know. We do this year round.
Yeah, I think so.
The difference between a person who puts on a costume and a cosplayer, the cosplayer knows the character and really gets into it.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to just, I'm wearing a cool costume. Don't I look cool? I'm a cool Harley Quinn. As opposed to, listen, man, Harley Quinn walks like this. She talks like this. And, and I don't begrudge any cosplay. I love cosplayers. They're awesome. Guys, girls, guys playing girls, girls playing guys. It's all great to me.
So I agree.
you were talking
Anytime
about
people are dressing up in nerdy stuff, I'm all about it.
I think you were talking about the hour mark.
Yeah, I think we're there.
So with that, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone hanging out with us in the chat today, and sorry for the late start, but we got it done anyway. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.
Oh God, that's a lot of